This is Cell Block 776 with another of my ham radio meeting videos. Ironically, for a hobby that is focused on communications, ham radio operators are bad about communicating what they normally do. So I've started this series. Local ham radio clubs, when they meet, have events, and I can get out there. I'll tape what's going on and put it up on YouTube so others can see, get an idea of what the typical ham radio club does, and maybe get some ideas for their local clubs if they're active. So today I'm at the American Red Cross chapter in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and that's where this month's meeting is going to be. Of course, it's August 25th, 2015. So I'm going to go in, set up my tripod, and videotape the program tonight. Thanks for watching. As always, keep training, keep learning, and keep watching.
Okay, I'm going to just go from left to right. This computer is set up for D-Star and FL-Digi and D-Rats.
Okay.
This is D-Star 2-meter radio. It is connected to the antenna at the top of the tower. It was a 2-meter antenna at the top of the tower. This is an HF and UHF and VHF. It can switch antennas so that it can be on the 2-meter antenna at the top of the tower, or it can be on a B&W, which is at 40 feet. And this one can do FL-Digi or voice. Then the ICOM is voice. It's on a G5RV that runs up to 80 feet at the top of the tower. This is a 440 repeater, 444950. Then this is 2-meter and 70 centimeters, and it's on an antenna that's at 80 feet, that's below the 2-meter antenna. This is the state 700 megacycle system. Red Cross has some channels in that. And then we have our own 4742 radio, which is at the top of the tower, which is this is a frequency that's assigned to Red Cross.
Cool.
And then we have handhelds. Those are 4742 handhelds. They'll be used in the Katrina anniversary thing in New Orleans Saturday.
Have you hooked up the D-Star repeater to the internet yet?
Have not. And the reason is because I don't have the ports forwarded into this room to get this antenna, get our repeater on the internet, and I need to get all that done. And then what I'm going to do is establish a reflector here that you can internet into and communicate with the repeater that's here, since the repeater that's here doesn't have its own internet.
Okay.
We're glad to have all the visitors.
Those three are current students.
Very good. Well, thank you for being here. I'm Brooke, N5DGUK. Let's see, Steve, I think you have a guest you want to introduce, please.
One of the reasons for doing this here at Red Cross every year or so is a recruiting mission to recruit ham operators for Red Cross. And so, you know, you have to listen to a sales pitch. And so I have with me Cindy Mabry, who is going to make the sales pitch for Red Cross. However, I will tell you that I'm the DST lead for the state, and I've just taken over disaster assessment too. So whichever one you do, you're going to work for me. And I definitely would like a few good people.
Well, this is a room full of good people, I can already tell. I admire your name tags with your call letters on it. I think that's pretty neat. Mary and Steve have been Red Cross volunteers for a long time. I hope I'm not missing anyone who is already a Red Cross volunteer, not calling your name. You are, okay? Your face is familiar. Tell me your name.
Tommy Bullard.
Tommy. Oh, I just met you a couple weeks ago when we worked on some training and some work. My name is Cindy Mabry, and I am the volunteer specialist for the capital area Lake Charles, and Lafayette. And we are looking for a few good people that will help us with communications during a storm. You all may know better than I do that the ham radio operators were able to stay online and keep communicating during our worst storms, Katrina and Gustav. These are the most current ones anyway, and helped aided with communications tremendously. So we would love to have you be a part of the Red Cross. Communications is a very critical ingredient. Our goal someday, we hope that every shelter that we would ever open anywhere in the state would have a ham radio operator with them to aid in making sure people connect, families get separated. We have had that experience not just during Katrina but other times. So it would be, you know, a wonderful public service to your community, to your state, if you would be so interested. What I have for you today, and I may have to go make some more copies, I'm happy to say, I didn't realize there'd be such a nice big crowd, is a link to our online application process. It is a secure system. We ask that you register that way online and track all of your volunteer hours that you do for the Red Cross that way too. All of your training gets collected in that website. There's a lot of training. Steve can get into that more with you as you go through. There's only a little bit, two things that I'm going to ask you all to do right away. We'd love to have you join us, and I'm going to pass these out and give them to everyone. If you think you have a little bit of interest and would like to go in and learn a little bit more about volunteering with a ham radio and the Red Cross, I'll just hand this to you. There you go. Yes, and go to. Alrighty. I think that's really all I need to say, so I don't want to hold on. I can skip Mary. She's already.
We can just share one.
Okay.
If you do volunteer, at some point in time, there are going to be some boxes that you check about what you want to do. And I highly recommend that you put DST, which is communication satellite dishes, computer networks, radios, and everything, down as your first choice, and disaster assessment down as your second choice. And the reason for that, besides the fact that I run both of those, is both of them require radio communication. Because we've done disaster assessment with radio before. In the '83 floods, we did that. We actually had ham operators who were doing a lot of the disaster assessment. It worked marvelously. So everyone is welcome, and we would appreciate all the help we can get. And as you pointed out, we could potentially have 35 shelters that we would be responsible for manning if you have a full coastal evacuation, and cell phones are not going to work, particularly in a Katrina-sized storm with 1 million people moving off the coast. And we would really need ham operators to help us with that. I took these slides from the 2015 Daytona Hamvention where there actually were some presentations on D-Star. The presentation on D-Star there was like 3 hours long, so I had to pick and choose what parts of it to talk about. I'm actually going to play about 15 minutes of it, but the rest of it I'm just going to kind of fast forward and talk to you about. This shows you where it come from. Now the next one is exactly what is D-Star. Oops. Let me do this. All right. D-Star is an open standard computer program. It's used to translate voice into a data stream so that it can be transmitted as data and then recovered and made voice again. The program is open, so any ham operator that wants to, or I guess anybody that wants to, can actually write a program involving D-Star. Right now, the equipment that's available is that you can buy commercially in terms of radios is pretty much the ICOM radios. There are are a number of digital modes, and we've had other presentation on digital modes, so I don't think we have to talk about all of them. This one comes from the Japanese Radio League, and D-Star is the only voice digital mode allowing and encouraging experimentation and open development, and I believe it's also the only one that will allow you to talk to somebody and send text to somebody at the same time, which is a very useful feature. Now, being digital, one of the things that happens, you get some advantage as the quality of the signal deteriorates. A digital signal is either going to be there or not there. So as it gets weaker and weaker and weaker, you still have the same signal, you're still equally able to copy it until you get to the end of the useful signal strength when it totally goes away. So it's either there or it's not, unlike an analog signal which can tail off, and eventually if you're on FM, like an FM repeater, it'll start to get noisy and it'll get harder and harder to hear. The digital mode has the advantage that it's much less inclined to do that. As the signal gets weaker, you can copy it. The process that happens is voice is converted to data the same way you make a CD. Then the data may be added to voice to produce a single data stream containing voice and data. The radio is modulated as a data carrier. It's actually an FM signal, but it's modulated to be a data stream. The entire thing is actually a data stream, even the voice. And it occupies, you can actually do this so that it occupies a smaller bandwidth than a normal FM signal. In the case of the D-Star, the signal is about 6 1/4 kilocycles wide. This is ICOM's comparison of the different advantages of the digital modes. I presented there for you to see. There are actually there is a D-Star information website. If you Google D-Star information, it will take you to it, and there's a world of material that's there. And that's where these slides came from. Now, to be technical about how it happens, the voice is converted to a digital modulation. It's transmitted at 4,800 BPS, 2,400 of which are for voice, and 1,200 for forward error correction on voice, so there is some error correction on it, and 1,200 for the data stream. And like an FM, like your FM handheld, it can operate simplex through a repeater, or D-Star has the advantage that you can also link repeaters or go through from one repeater to additional repeaters through the internet. Now, a D-Star repeater that is fully functional and has all the capability of it has some differences. First of all, it's actually a stacked set of transceivers so that it transmits on 1.2 gig, 440, and 2 meters. And you actually, in the programming process, which will be explained in a little bit, you actually can program, if you have a repeater that's set up like this, you can program which of those you want to talk to. So if you're on 2 meters, but you want to talk to somebody that's on 70 centimeters, you can actually program your radio so that you will be on 70 centimeters on the repeater, on the remote repeater. Not the one that you're going in through, but the one you've linked it to. There are also a thing called reflectors, and a reflector is sort of like a conference bridge where a number of people can get together and you can have a common communication. They do not have to be all on the same repeater because it's linked to the internet. One of the things that you can do with D-Star is that you don't have to be on a radio to use D-Star. There are devices, one of them is called a DV dongle, where you can get on the internet and access radios through the repeater that is remote from you via the internet. So you can get on, and I don't have one of these, I haven't used it, but you can get on the dongle, go by internet to a repeater in Alaska, and then talk to somebody on that as though you were in a radio in Alaska on that repeater. Now there's also a program called DRATS, which I'm going to talk about a little later, which is used as a text messaging service or a document sending service. And all you need to do DRATS through D-Star computers is to actually have the software which you can download and install on your computer and register. And once you've done that, you could actually text message through a D-Star repeater anywhere. This shows the change in over time in the number of D-Star repeaters. A gateway is a D-Star repeater that has a connection to the internet, so that you can, by going to the gateway, link to another repeater via the internet, or you can link to the internet so that people with the DV dongle that are just sitting there with a computer can communicate. Now, D-Star radios are pretty much available from ICOM. The dongle is a non-radio device, and there's a couple of other ones that are there. If you want to play with a Raspberry Pi, there's one that you can do that use that. I will say this about the ICOM radios. I don't think they make the 91 and 92 AD anymore, but if you do have one of those, or if you get an opportunity to get one of those, I have had terrible experience with battery life on those things. There is no good way to keep the battery. If it's charged, the battery's going to go bad. If it's not charged, the battery's going to go bad. If it gets warm, the battery's going to go bad. And they're expensive batteries. I mean, it's a definite. And I can tell you that I've actually done this. I've had a Yaesu VX7R radio and the ICOM radio and the batteries in the same container in the same place. And the VX7R will work, and it'll outlast 3 ICOM batteries.
That's right.
Now, ICOM has mobiles, handhelds. There are repeaters available. Most of the radios are dual band. There are some that are single band that are cited there. All the radios will also operate standard FM, so you can use them on any repeater, or you can use them on the digital using D-Star at your convenience. ICOM radios have a built-in serial port for data transmission, so you can take any of the ICOM radios and hook it up so that you can send data over it. You also have some ICOM radios which are available with a built-in GPS. All of them are capable of being hooked up to a GPS, and there actually is a digital position reporting system that's similar to the one that you're more familiar with APRS, but there is also a digital reporting system that goes through that. These are some of the ICOM radios. I think the 2200 is what we have here at Red Cross. And I don't know about the new ones, and I really can't tell you other than the bad experience with the batteries on the handhelds. And this is the handhelds. You have the 91 AD, the 92 AD, and then you've got some lower ones. And originally, the D-Star radios were pretty expensive. The price on them has come down some now, but they are proud of them.
Icon's proud of everything.
I heard that. Yeah. At 1.2 gig, things are a little bit different because you can actually, on a 1.2 gig repeater, you've actually got enough bandwidth for high-speed data transmission.
What is high speed?
I think it's 128 BPS. I think it's it's what you can do with the 1.2 gig. This shows you the repeater architecture that I was talking to you about. You have the repeater controller, then you have a 23 centimeter data and voice, and then the 2 meter and the 70 centimeter. And I think that the 23 centimeter data and voice are separate because of the high speed, the availability of high speed at 1.2 gig. There is a registration process, and what that does is get you into the system so that you can use the internet side of it. It doesn't cost you anything, and it's pretty easy to do. You'll find out how to do it on the website. I really wasn't going to go into that. That's the form. That's what the form looks like.
Have patience with that.
Yes. Now, I'm gonna play a video for you that came from the Daytona Hamvention that has somebody who's done this a whole bunch talk about the programming process for the radios because it's really interesting. But you actually can program your radio to pick out a particular station that you want to call. More normally, you have it set up so that you will talk to anybody who's on that repeater, and you can program your radio so that you can, by virtue of the signal that you're sending, tell the repeater to link via the internet to any other repeater with the same capability. So if for instance, if the repeater that we had here in Baton Rouge had an internet connection, I understand it doesn't, you could get on the repeater and by sending a one-letter signal that you add to the string where you call the repeater, you can tell the repeater to link to a repeater in Germany that has the same capability. And at that point in time, the repeater in Germany and the repeater in Baton Rouge are linked, and they're going to stay linked until somebody unlinks them, which properly you should do when you're through. But it's interesting that you can do this and actually, be driving down the street and talk to somebody in Germany who's on the repeater there, and just like you're driving through town. All right, now I'm going to switch over now, and I'm going to play you this is going into the details of how you program the radios. I know I'm not going to play the part that talks about how to program the newer radios, because I think most of you that have these Star radios got them about when I got them, so you've got the older style radios. And the new ones are a lot easier to program, so if you understand this, you will be able to use the new ones much easier.
We're going to cover a lot of the programming features of D-Star in this one. We're going to cover DR mode. We're going to cover updating your memories. Not the one up here, the one in your radio. So we'll, this is the real meat hour. Someone asked, where's the beef? It's here.
Quick little edit here. At this point in the program, we watched a YouTube video that goes for about 25 minutes. The actual video runs about an hour. We watch about 25 minutes of it. But to protect the integrity of that person's upload and their property, instead of us watching the whole thing here, I'm going to put links down below in the description box so you can go to that YouTube video itself and watch what you want to watch there. And then, you know, we'll continue on with the rest of the program here. It's going to wrap up with demonstration of DRATs and the messaging capabilities there, and then some question and answer and discussion with the audience about D-Star and what's going on locally here, and repeaters, system fusion, some other stuff. So you can either stop here and go watch that other video, or watch the rest of this video and then check out the links below for more information. Thanks. Let's get back to the program.
It goes on for another hour, and it goes through a lot of the programming stuff on the newer radios that probably most of you don't have, and if you do have, and you understand how to do this, then with the newer radios you can do it a whole lot easier. The most important lesson that was there was that when you enter a repeater, be sure and put the module that you want to go to in it, because if you don't put the module, it isn't going to work. And it took me 6 months to find that out. So yeah, I could have found it out a lot easier by reading the book. But you know, if you try to program it like a normal radio, it does not work that way. I have another computer that has DRATs that is set up on it, which I'm going to try to hook up. It's going to take me a minute. If this works, you'll be able to actually see the other stations that are on DRATs, and it's really neat because all you have to do, an internet connection is all you need. You bring it up, and you know, you've got a list of stations that are on at that particular time who are signed in. Some of them may be in through a radio or through a repeater someplace. Some of them may be people sitting in their home that have just done the same thing you're doing. You just highlight it and talk to them. It's text, but you can do that. Just give me a second to set this up. Are there any questions about the what you've seen so far with D-Star? Download from your computer. You see down here where it says RAT connected, when you set it up, you can make provisions for it to go in through your radio or the internet. If it goes in through the internet, it doesn't say internet, it says RAT. So this means that it's connected via the internet. You can come down here and, well, let's not mess with that right now. But if you clicked on that, you would see the radio. There are people calling CQ right now. DL0NOT, for example, tells you where he is. Over in the right, you'll see my status, which tells you that my DRATS is online because I've connected to the internet here. And what mine displays when anybody clicks on me, it says online in Baton Rouge.
Steve, this is not D-Star then, is it?
This is using the D-Star system.
Okay.
But at DRATS is D-Star backwards. And what DRATS is a method of sending text and documents via radio using the D-Star system. So you could send a text document from here to someone using a D-Star radio that had it hooked up to a computer. You can do the same thing. If you send it to them, it goes through the internet to his repeater and then on. You'll see on the, in terms of who's on here, You have N3TSD and DL0NOT. You don't quite have. Yeah, you do have them up there. If you want to do chat, you just click on chat here. And you can highlight the station and click on it and you know, send them, say hello or whatever you want to do. Just your text message is going to be typed in down here, and then you hit send. Actually, just like you were sending a text message with your phone. You can have up here at the top. You can have messages. You've got. If you click on a new message, it says choose form, and you have lots of options. You see, you've got the ICS forms, you've got a standard email, and you've got an ARL radiogram form. You can click on whichever one of those you want, it will fill in, and then you send it. And we actually had, the original grand scheme of things was to be able to use BRARC as a mechanism to transmit confidential patient information, since theoretically D-Star is HIPAA qualified. If you add the text message side of it, it becomes an opportunity where you could send patient information in an emergency. If you had, for instance, the hospital set up like we've been working on already. That's how DRAS works. It is super, super easy to use. And it rides literally just like it was a D-Star signal. And if you have the DB dongle, you can do the same thing, except you can send voice too.
Is that what you have, Tyler?
Yes.
How does it work?
Works good from the couple of times I've used it.
Questions on DRAX?
You can send files as well.
Yes. Files, you can, just how big your file is just, this is not the fastest way to send data unless you go to 1.2 gig. So, there is some practical limitation on the size of files, but yes, you can, and it works very well.
The reason we were thinking about in the hospital situation is that the employee in the hospital, say someone in the pharmacy, has a list of drugs that they want from another hospital. And to send by voice, you'd be talking about spelling, chloramphenicol, Charlie. It could be kind of, for a lay person, for a ham operator to try to phonetically spell this list of 20 drugs.
You'd be there for
Yeah,
days.
you'd be there for days, with all kinds of errors. But the hospital employee in the pharmacy could actually send you by email internally a list of these 20 drugs as a file. And then you could send the file, say a notepad.
Right.
And the other ham operator doesn't have to sit there and phonetically write all this down. He receives the file, which then he can transmit to the pharmacy at that hospital.
Which is what I had to do during Katrina at Lamar Dixon, actually send medicines phonetically.
So we thought that the confidentiality was one issue. Theoretically, a scanner operator, could have the equipment and could decipher, but it's unlikely that the usual scanner operators can be able to do that. So it did have some level of privacy.
Well, they'd have to build something to translate the data
Well, they
and
could buy
make the
the-
voice again.
Would that violate the HIPAA laws though?
Well, theoretically, it's supposed to, in an emergency, probably,
Yeah, that would be overridden.
yeah, most likely, but, it's not completely confidential, so, if you used it,
Like that really wasn't sufficiently obscure.
yeah.
Right.
Specifying a patient by name.
Well, that was another thing, was we thought that we could possibly do that, identify patients by name and sending it through D-Star, in an emergency. I'm not talking about routine.
Yeah.
Because you would have some level of security, but it's not complete. But the other thing that to me attracted me about it was the idea of being able to send files, because there, you're not assuming responsibility for conveying this information. All you're doing is conveying the file. If there's a mistake in that list of 20 drugs, that mistake occurred when the pharmaceutical employee typed it in there. You had nothing to do it. You don't even see it.
Yeah.
You could open it up, but you wouldn't have to see that file. You could just simply send it on. So I think that's a big advantage.
That's huge.
And if you have internet connection, then you can send it to different places other than just.
Yeah, you could, if you had an internet connection and a repeater that had a gateway in it, you could conceivably, send it all the way to, anywhere.
But you're sending that specific file, and you're not introducing errors that you could easily introduce if you were trying to verbally communicate to one lay operator to another lay operator. You could easily see how screwed up that could get.
I mean, there's some drugs where just one or two letters difference, it's a whole different drug. Oh,
Yeah. But another place that it can be very handy is if you have a Katrina-sized emergency, Red Cross shelters that are largely cut off are going to have 500 people potentially in the shelter population. Well, their loved ones would like to know that their loved one has survived the storm. And so there is a need to transmit a list of people who are in the shelter so that it can be sent to Red Cross headquarters and potentially distributed on the channels where people have registered wanting to know what happened to their loved one. Well, using a digital mode, and it's particularly easy with D-Star, if you've got the radios, you can send the list very easily. And again, there's no possibility for errors are going to be introduced by the ham operator because the ham operator is transmitting the list that he has given. And you can send it anywhere. I mean, you could have Red Cross in Falls Church, Virginia could be managing the information for to try to find the loved ones, and you could send it by email there using your D-Star radio and D-Rads. Other questions? Yes, sir.
What's it going to take to get this D-Star repeater connected to the internet? I mean, that's what makes it great, right?
There it is, and the D-Star, the only D-Star repeater in town here belongs to the city parish.
Okay.
And they have, for whatever reason, it was down. It was torn up, and the antenna was torn up in Gustav, and it stayed down for several years. And they've recently got it back up in the air. I don't know what the problem is to have an internet connection to it. Now, one thing that
It had to do with phone lines.
They couldn't get a T1 line out
The
there.
history is originally that the hospitals got grants, and several of the hospitals purchased equipment. They purchased the ICOM 2200s. Lane had a little extra money put in their grant, which included a repeater. And they gave or leased or lent their repeater to the city parish, and they put it on the repeater tower that's downtown on River Road. So that's how this was prior to Gustav. This was after Katrina, but prior to Gustav, I don't recall the exact year. So that repeater actually was purchased by Lane, but in fact it's a city parish building. And there were plans to put they actually had the computer, but they had the T1
They couldn't get
line
it.
was the issue, the
Well-
cost, and who was gonna bear the cost. And then we had Gustav, and then,
I don't think you need a T1 for this. Do you?
It would help.
I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Well, see, Robert wanted to be here, N5 ULA, but he had some stuff and he couldn't come here, but I thought that the 440 repeater was up and running on D-Star, the one that was downtown by the bus station. And I
don't know anything about it.
Well, he would be the one that would know, and maybe you would get with N5 ULA, I can give you his phone number.
Okay.
Later, because he and I discussed that. And they were working on improving 444.055 up on the 9.4 repeater site. I can hit that from Denham with a handy talkie.
Okay.
And, it's a really good repeater. What the problem with the 8A D-Star and one of the other repeaters is the controllers, it took a hit and the controllers were bad. And they changed the controllers out. The rest of that stuff, it's above my pay grade, and Robert can tell you about it.
Yeah.
But they were looking at a way to get internet connections there, or actually link one of the repeaters via that to do something like that, but that's still on the board.
Robert was working at City Parish at the time all this occurred.
Correct.
So we had some help there, but then he changed jobs. We didn't have a good connection to City Parish.
Right.
And then he went back.
He went back, and he's got a computer, but it still has to do with getting the telephone connection.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that we've actually talked about was putting in a connection here that had a D-Star internet connection that would then use a radio to access the repeater. And I think they call that a ratflector, but that's what Matt Anderson called it anyway. And we still could potentially do that. The problem that I've got is that the repeater that I've got, I'm having some technical problems getting the ports forwarded, so all of the aspects of that work. But eventually we may have a D-Star radio here that can be accessed via internet and use it to hit the one or several of the D-Star repeaters here in town.
And then, when I was in the malls, they were putting on D-Star on the hospital, and, since I've been up here, I don't know what's been going on,
Oshner
but gosh,
has
yeah,
a system.
yeah, that's what I thought.
They're linked. So the hospital, the Oshner Hospital here has a D-Star repeater that's linked either to the North Shore or directly to New Orleans.
Right,
Their hospitals are linked. And the idea originally, Tom and I were interested in this, the whole idea was that they were gonna have this whole series of repeaters from here to the coast were gonna be linked. Alabama has essentially done that. If you look at the Alabama network, the whole state is linked with D-Star repeaters. So it's a very nice system, but I'm not holding my breath. We did some work with the D-Star at the hospitals several years ago before Goose fell. But it just never, we had the D-Star repeaters, but to my knowledge, they never used it.
They got working it through Homeland Security too.
That's what slowed it down. They can either speed it up or slow it down.
The hospital got their grants through Homeland Security.
Yeah.
But see, the hospitals, it's a tough situation. If you've got employees who are hams and are interested, you can kind of move forward. But if you don't have employees who are interested, it's hard because some of the hospitals up in Shreveport train employees.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine and good, but then those people don't get on the radio and talk to one another. So then you get a disaster. They don't, we're sort of self-trained because every day we're talking to one another in the car or whatever. We kind of know how to use the radios. But when you train, you get your license, but you don't ever use it. You don't get interested in the hobby. And then you get a disaster, then you're not, your training is kind of, it's rusty. So I don't know what the answer is, but yeah, the hospital saw it as an opportunity to satisfy requirements that the government was giving them to have communications and do it with a grant. I mean, so to them, that was just, this was great. But it worked where you had people that were dedicated to it. But unless you've got volunteers or employees that are willing to do it,
In Alabama, they've got, like you said, half a dozen places on high towers, equipment and everything else, all furnished by a grant.
Well, what happened during the tornadoes, the one that went through Tuscaloosa and skipped across the back of the parking lot, thank God it did not hit the hospital, it was a big hospital. All the police radios, repeaters were down, but the repeater on top of the hospital was still up and running. So the police and the fire department, when the search and rescue bunch, they had no communication. So what they did, I don't know if y'all went, y'all probably, some of y'all went over there, but it was probably after the zones had cooled down some, but they were using 2 meter 2-meter handy talkies in their search and rescue, because that's all they had. And you know, when you're doing search and rescue and you have windows of opportunity because people have trapped in debris and hurt, you gotta get to them quick, and you need that communication to help provide the service for those people.
Yeah. After Katrina, for the first 3 days after Katrina, Washington Parish, the only communication that it had with the outside world was ham radio operators.
Yeah, they linked into the Hammond repeater, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine worked Joplin, Missouri. He sent me some of the first pictures, and I was just blown away when I saw Joplin. The Red Cross went up there, but the Salvation Army got there from St. Louis quicker than some of the Red Cross people. And he was showing me some of the pictures. I just couldn't, just unbelievable. But they had portable repeaters. I think the Red Cross had one. I think Salvation Army had a portable repeater up there with them. And it was just, I couldn't get over it, you know. It just, people sometimes are not prepared for that type of disaster.
Yeah, I don't, the Red Cross had a 4742 repeater, or?
I don't remember, because he, you know, when Chuck told me, Chuck was in the middle of that thing for a week, and he said he was just like blown away. They found the hospital in Joplin that got blown up. They found X-rays 60 miles away.
Jesus.
60, we blew X-rays 60 miles.
I've actually got a radio here that can be programmed as a crossband repeater.
Yeah.
That we could, I don't have the antenna to hook it to, but we actually could provide a remote repeater that way.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Steve, the DRAD software runs on your computer, and that's what you just demonstrated here, but it will also connect to a D-Star radio?
Yes, sir.
Or both, so an internet connection or the radio, or both?
It'll connect to both. You can actually, in the, hold on, in the lower right hand, you can't quite get there. Let me see if I can get this in. There's a, I can't get you there. Maybe it is. Okay. You see right here that says 91AD, and it says RAT. Well, it has a protocol that it goes through looking for how it can connect itself to the D-Star system to receive. And so if your radio isn't connected, it will look on the internet. So in this case, it looked on the internet and it found it, and so it's connected via RAT. See RAT right here? But for transmit purposes, it's looking for my radio, because you have to manually set the radio. So if I click on this and put RAT in, okay, I can now transmit via the internet as well. I don't have to go through my radio, but I can actually switch back and forth between the two.
You mean like using Echo with your laptop and a headset? You can use it that way?
For DRATs, it's only going to be
Text. Okay.
So you have to have one of the dongle devices or the 2 or 3 other possibilities in order to do voice.
Yeah. Okay.
But for DRATs, it's text messages, files, or chat messages.
That was my next question. You mentioned there was a DV dongle and then a DV access point. Are those, I'm assuming, do about the same thing as the DRAD except with voice?
Yes. There are various ways that you can connect voice-wise through the internet to a D-Star repeater.
Yeah, Todd continue.
Yeah, Todd's got one.
The access point is it's really a 2 meter, 70 centimeter low
It's a
power
little
radio
different than the dongle.
that you connect to your computer, and then you can use your handy talkie to connect with that.
Okay. So that's what, like short-range communications,
Yeah.
that you're around that access point, but then it connects to the internet.
It's 100 milliwatt.
Yeah. But
Okay.
This for all the world looks like Motorola trunking system. And having to sit and program handy talkies and controllers and mobiles and putting in their talk groups and who can talk to who and who can't talk to who. Can you just take your D-Star, put in the frequency and tone when you're in New Orleans and say 35 TCX on the repeater, or do you have to program everything?
Yes, you can do that, but you have to, what you have to do is, of course, in the who you are, you put in your own call sign on your radio. In the your, you put in CQ, CQ, CQ. And then for the repeater, you program in the call sign of the repeater, and then in the 8th space, you put which stack of the repeater that you want to be on. You want to be on 2 meters, 70 centimeters,
What
or
if you don't
1.2.
know?
Well, you can try one at a time.
The new repeater directory is gearing toward a lot of digital stuff. As far as, besides Echo and RLP, they'll tell you if it's a D-Star repeater, and a lot of the information will be in the repeater directory.
Yeah, but if just the A, B, or C in the 8th position picks which stack of that repeater that you want to be on.
One of the neat things about the 51 and the 5100 is it has a repeater directory
Yeah.
built right into the radio.
It's built in, but not all of them are gonna have the whole stack. Some of them are just 2 meters only or 440.
Right. But I think you still have to put in the stack, and you still have to put in the A, B, or C
Yeah.
in the 8th position, or it isn't gonna work. At least that's been my experience.
Just as the other side of technology, I was in Arkansas, I spent 2 months there with FEMA, and they were rolling out, the hams around Little Rock area were rolling out Yaesu Fusion.
Yep.
Didn't know, FEMA takes up a lot of my time sometimes. But I went, oh, new toys. And got invited down to the county emergency management place. So it's in Pine Bluff of all places.
Yeah.
And I went, ooh, what's that? So they set it up. They were using, on the FM side, they were using PL tones. On the digital side, they were using, is it DCS?
Yep. Digital squelch tones.
So,
This was all-
and you just programmed it in, there wasn't any of that. And if you came up on DCS, the repeater knew you were digital, and you had FM conversations going on and digital conversations going on, and it was all going through the same repeater, and the digital was coming out on one handy-talkie,
Yep.
and the FM was coming out of the other handy-talkie, and I went, ooh, this is neat.
The Fusion repeater has an automatic setting where it will do that.
Yeah.
So,
And the kicker to
which
it
is kind of neat.
is they paid Yaesu $500 and agreed to put the repeater on the air and did. And
There's a Fusion repeater in Baton Rouge on 443-100.
And Ascension Parish is waiting on theirs to come in.
If I remember correct, the digital squelch tone is 43, it's either 43 or 49, whatever that squelch.
I got $500. Let's throw the 440 off the air and put digital at the hospital.
And I'll tell you what, the batteries in your Yaesu handheld will work.
Last longer.
They will last. They're not gonna quit on you. I was actually gonna bring my 91 AD to the meeting tonight. I charged up the battery 3 weeks ago, had it all set up, got it out tonight, and the battery has failed. That was my last battery. That's like my 5th battery that I've had at $80 a piece.
But
For what it's worth, Yaesu's extended that club discount, $500 for their $2,000 repeater to the end of, I want to say September, something like that. FYI.
That would be a great thing for
Yeah, the
us.
Ascension Club's plan on swapping out this 147-225 machine with the new Fusion whenever it comes in. They're having bad problems with 225 lately, and they want to make one trip out there and swap everything out.
But that's one of the complaints people had about the D-Star. It was you either did D-Star or you didn't, yes or no. But Yaesu went to the next level by designing a repeater that where you could input a digital signal and it would repeat out an analog signal.
Right.
And which is a plus, because like they said, some of us old timers don't like the digital stuff. So, and they don't want to convert over, so they want to have an opportunity to do either one.
So it'll handle both modes?
Yeah.
Okay.
D-Star has its place, but in the, however so many years that thing's been sitting up there and argued over 1,000 times.
Oh, yeah.
There's no internet line on it, it's not usable without one. And so, where do you go with it? Do you tell Lane to go take it back?
Well, you can use the 8A repeater that's here, you can use, and you can use to have reasonably confidential communications as long as you're talking to somebody who's also within range of that same repeater who has a D-Star radio.
But it was put up with a grant to benefit the medical community, so it's not doing what the grant was supposed to do. So if they take it back, it goes stick it somewhere that has internet. I need an RJ45, please, right there. Then it fulfills its mission. It seems that
Yeah, what he said.
but I deal with this all the time from the FEMA side of it, but there should be a way to do that. Rather than let it sit down there and do nothing.
Yeah, right.
I agree.
I was all set to buy one of these new, what is it, 51A pluses or something, they found out they didn't have the internet connectivity, and it's like, what's the point?
Yeah.
Well, they have it in other cities if you go visit New Orleans or someplace else. And I'm told that maybe the 440 repeater that's gonna come on here is gonna have it, but I checked the list of repeaters that we had in Baton Rouge as of a couple of days ago, and it didn't list anything but that.
Steve, it looks like the D-Star has a lot more capability digitally. I wonder, do you think that it might be a replacement for APRS?
My guess.
Other than they're just so doggone expensive?
That's, the fact that it's expensive and the radios are limited, I think would be the issue. It's, APRS you can do with whatever's there and your, favorite, GPS.
You can send short messages with APRS, and we actually did that in some emergency drills at the hospital.
Yeah,
But
the
messages
YASA will
are-
do it too.
But the messages are so short, you don't have the capability of sending files, you can't send
Right.
extensive. As far as from that standpoint, there clearly is advantage to the D-Star.
Keep in mind, you can send files, you can send messages, radio to radio using FL Digi. Just all you gotta do is sit there and type it up on your computer, hold your microphone and key it up next to the computer speakers, and hit send, and it'll send it right through your radio. No interfaces, no digital stuff. Your $35 bow phone will send it right through the same repeater, and it'll come out on the other end over your computer speakers, or over your radio speaker into your computer's microphone, and boom, there's your file, there's your stuff right there. No need for $200 radios, no need for, $800, $2,000, repeaters or anything. You can do it analog, FM, holding the microphone up and keying it next to your computer.
Well, that's actually what we've done here, is that we have the D-Star radio, but we've also got the same computer hooked to the D-Star radio is also hooked to, has the FL Digi program on it, and it hooks either to a 2-meter radio or an HF radio, so that we can use FL Digi and use MT63, which is the most, it's wide-banded, but it's about the most robust that's out there. And that's what the plan is here to use. Further questions? That's the D-Star story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yay!
And the hammock's in the attic, right?
Yeah. Now, you wonder how often this may get used. Well, there's a storm headed for South Florida right now. If it takes a southern track, it may get in the Gulf. Erica.
Right there, that's what they're talking about up there on the screen.
Yeah.
Those women get pretty nasty up there.
Well, by then, it ought to be done with.
It's gotta go through the same
It's-
drive
and
that killed the animal.
The timing on it getting into the Gulf is like potentially Monday or Tuesday. So you may have this big thing in New Orleans that's about to take place. And just as soon as before the people even get out of New Orleans, there may be a storm headed.
Well, sad is Katrina, this 10th anniversary.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're employed.
That's it?
That's it.
Fusion radio gear is not quite as expensive.